I want to welcome you to Target Focus Training this weekend. My name is Tim Larkin. I am creator and founder of Target Focus Training. This system that you're going to experience this weekend is really a culmination of about probably 15 or 20 years of development. And no one person is responsible for everything. This is not my system. Okay, I mean, yeah, I'm the figurehead. I'm the person that puts out there. I am, I'm the biggest believer in this approach that you're about to see this weekend. But I don't want to give you any idea that this is solely, some concepts that I came up with and just, I'm the Mozart of fighting or something. Okay, it's just not that. Nothing. I don't think you can have any success if you just keep it all with your own views and your own things. I need to make sure that that the views are challenged constantly. And in the first iteration of what I did, I was exposed to this stuff when I was in the military. I had gone through Naval Special Warfare training, SEAL training. I made it more than 3/4 of the way through training before I met a really unfortunate diving accident that ruptured my eardrums beyond repair for diving. And what I thought was a career-ending situation for me in the special operations community actually ended up opening up a whole window to me that I never even knew was available. I was put into the intelligence community and stayed back in Naval Special Warfare and got to work at a level that nobody at my junior level should have been allowed to work at. And I knew that, and I was very fortunate that it happened. One of the things that I got exposed to, because I was at that level of a command, was they looked at things from a standpoint of how can we improve our ability to do our jobs. And one of the things that we saw was a glaring problem at that point, although it was ignored, was the way hand-to-hand combat was taught at that level. Now, this is like the late 80s. Mid to late 80s. And so I had three black belts prior to going into the military. I was actively involved in martial arts, combat sports. It's something that I was brought up on. My grandfather, very early on, felt it was very important that you learned how to take care of yourself, the way he'd like to say it. He was a South Boston Irishman. And probably one of the first things he ever gave me was my boxing gloves, my Everlast boxing gloves. Other kids are getting taken to the zoo, and my grandfather's taking me to the fights around Boston. I think my mom probably thought I was going to the zoo, but my grandfather thought it was more instructive to go see the real thing. And what was interesting is even back then, my grandfather would say, "Hey, this is what you do in the ring, and then this is what you do on the street." And I was very fortunate that very early on, somebody made that point to me, because it didn't make sense to me at first, but then I kind of understood, okay, well, here we have rules, here I'm just trying to compete, but out here it seems like do whatever it takes to make sure that you survive the situation. And I think it's unfortunate that distinction isn't made to kids early on anymore. I think I was probably one of the last group of my generation that really got that drilled into them early on. It didn't really come to full culmination until I got back into the military, and then I kind of saw what the idea was. And what was happening was a lot of what we were using in the military at that time was based around combat sports and martial arts, a competitive-based system that had rules upon it, and the whole idea was bettering your opponent. And it really didn't translate to real situations in the military. And, I knew that, and we got to see a lot of great, martial artists and combat sports practitioners come in and give us demonstrations. And at that time, nothing was able to translate to the job. Meaning, as soon as we put our weapons on, as soon as we put our gear on, all of a sudden you couldn't do all those moves. As soon as you took them outside of the mats and you put them out on concrete, or you put them in, the field environment, all of a sudden all those moves that looked so great here and worked so well just didn't translate there. It was not that it wasn't effective, and it's not that these people weren't great people, because they were good, and they were very good at what they did. The issue was, when you go out there and all of a sudden all the components that make that sport great are taken away from you, the ref, the preparation, the rules, all that stuff, you find out very quickly that violence is very different than a sport application. And this whole weekend that you're going to see is going to be all about using violence as a survival tool. And that was a culmination. I found a guy, I actually, through a DEA friend of mine, told me I needed to go check out this little studio over in San Diego. You got to meet this guy. He's a real jerk, but he goes, you get along with jerks. And he said he actually probably has some good information. Well, I found out that the guy wasn't necessarily a jerk. He was just blunt. And he had the culmination, he had something that I had never really seen that type of application before. It was really the base level of what you're about to experience this weekend. It was there that I first started meeting some of the instructor staff that you see here. I've got, actually, guys, come on out. I'll just pull you in, your instructors this weekend. One of the first guys I met at that particular establishment was this guy right here, Chris Rank-Burr, who has joined me in the last 2 years here to help develop, target-focused training. But what we saw back then, he was the same thing. As soon as he saw what this guy was preaching, this guy was a combat vet, and he was putting good information out, we realized, hey, this is what we want. This is what we always thought it was all about. And we had done the other stuff. We had done martial arts and combat sports. We had done that before, and we saw the pros and cons of it. But as soon as somebody starts showing you effective uses of violence, and your goal is to be able to survive something out in the streets, that's something that you wanted. That's what I wanted. I didn't want to win any trophies. I didn't want to get multiple belts or anything like that. I wanted to know that if it hit the fan out there, I was going to be able to survive that situation. And most of what I got didn't. And what was funny was I noticed that also the guys that were winning fights out in the street weren't very, I don't know, they weren't very good. They were just real aggressive. They just came in, they didn't have really great technique, they didn't do any fancy moves, but man, they were effective. They'd do stuff like just grab a guy by the back of the head and repeatedly hit his head down, and that would work. And you'd sit there and you go, but that guy's a black belt. What was it? And what we learn about is nobody has a patent on violence. And violence is available to everybody. And that's something that nobody likes to talk about. People like to sit there and say, well, if I learn all of this stuff, it's going to give me some immunization to violence. And then what you realize is, no, a guy that just wants to, do something to you, he can do it. He can walk right up, take something as basic. The thing I like to talk about is pick up a rock, walk up behind you, bash you over the head repeatedly with a rock, and guess what? All your training goes out the window. I could walk right out that door right now, and I could be greeted by a baseball bat, and guess what? I go down just like everybody else. So I'm not very impressed with somebody's skills as what they can do on a mat or what they can do out there, because I realize it's really of little use if you don't understand what the tool of violence is all about and the pros and cons. And what's nice about this is that, yes, we are going to be able to show you some incredible stuff this weekend, but it works for each and every one of you, because if what you're about to learn this weekend required speed, strength, and physical ability, then it's really kind of useless to even do any of this training, because I don't know about you folks, but I have never run up against anybody when I've had a situation that is smaller, weaker, and slower. Okay? They always seem to be these superhumans that are bigger, faster, and stronger. Therefore, to focus on something that requires you to be bigger, faster, and stronger all weekend really is not going to help you in the realm of violence. But the good news is that there's parameters out there that can help you to make it a lot less chaotic and a lot less scary when you're dealing with violence. And the nice thing about it is you've got all different body types that you're going to be able to work with this weekend. You can see from the instructor staff, you have all different body types that you're going to be able to work with this weekend. All the instructors that you're going to be working with this weekend will go by their first names or nicknames. We've got Safi here, Chris, Torin, and Tony. Okay? And yes, each one of them I could put a master in front of, and their competency level is there, far beyond it. But we want to be approachable this weekend. And that's why, because our whole focus about this weekend is not what we can do. And yes, I've trained just about every unit you can think of. We've been here, our guys have trained people that have used this stuff successfully in life and death situation repeatedly. We've trained military units that have used this stuff with great success. We've had people survive horrendous violence using these techniques, and we've all experienced our own issues with dealing violence. So That's there for you this weekend, but again, I want you to understand that these guys are here to make sure that you get this information, because it really doesn't matter what we've done, who we've trained, or how effective those people are, because it's not going to do a damn thing for any of you. This is not a system based on competition. This is not about you competing with your reaction partner this weekend. This is about allowing somebody to use your body to understand how trauma affects the human body. It's just that simple. Okay? Violence is rarely the answer in any situation. I mean, we can, we can go over that, and we'll talk about, social versus asocial very soon. But what this weekend is all about is when violence is the answer, because the real part of that equation is when violence is the answer, it's the only answer. And that's truly what this weekend's all about. And what you're going to get, the methodologies that Target Focused Training has, we feel, is a superior way to get the most out of the tool of violence. But like we said, if all else fails, pick up that rock and start hitting the guy over the head. And that'll work too. There is no excuse not to use violence. That tool is available to you. And the problem is, it's been stigmatized. Violence has been stigmatized as something only that the bad guys can do. Okay? And what we're hoping this weekend's going to culminate with is that you're going to understand that no, violence is available to everybody, and just because this guy is a predator doesn't mean that I can't be effective if I use the tool against him. It works just as well against him, no matter how crazy those eyes are, no matter how huffed up he is, no matter how mean he looks, no matter what his history is. If you crush that windpipe, he's a really mean guy with a crushed windpipe. And we can teach you to do that stuff really quick. Now, it's a two and a half day weekend. You're saying, geez, what can I learn in 2.5 days? We get that all the time. They're putting people out over the line during World War II with less than 14 hours of hand-to-hand training. And these guys were going out doing assassinations, the most sophisticated types of use of hand-to-hand combat. You can learn an awful lot in this time frame. Why we are not constrained by convention. We don't have rules that we have to worry about. We don't have considerations that you would have to if you're going to be in a combat sport or a martial art. There are things that you have to do. You have to develop physical dynamics, and you have to develop conditioning and strategies and things. Why? Because there are rules to protect your opponent. Here what we're talking about is not a competition. We're talking about when a predator gives you an opportunity, we're going to show you how to use that information. And it's very easy to do. The easiest thing in the world to do is to hurt the human body. It's extremely vulnerable. You just need a roadmap. And we're going to give you that roadmap this weekend. Okay, we're going to cover every parameter. Okay, there is no difference. There is no such thing you're going to find out as, there's no difference when tools come in. When a knife comes into the mix, when a club comes into the mix, when a firearm comes into the mix, it's all the same. Violence is violence. And you're going to learn real understanding that there's only one weapon we got to worry about. And once you understand that, everything else just becomes a tool. So get ready for a weekend. Make sure that you ask questions at the appropriate times. There's a lot of information that we want to get out, and we want to make sure that you get the most out of this weekend. If there are any pre-existing conditions that you have, we will maybe show a set of movements and techniques that we're going to have everybody do. If this puts you in a challenging position with a prior injury or something, you just need to let the instructor and the training partner know that. We want you to be able to execute the movements on somebody, but we don't want to put you in any danger of re-injuring something if, say you got a bad back or something and we have you going down on the mat a certain way that would be, hard for you to do. Just let us know that. We'll make sure that your training partner has somebody else that they can work in with so that they get the training also. The goal of this weekend is not for you to get a good workout. We don't want you to walk out of that door, yeah, we're going to challenge you and you're going to feel it. But the idea is that you learn the concepts and the principles. Okay, that's the most important thing.